Hey Reddit, this is a long one, but I need to get this off my chest. I guess I should start from the very beginning. It all began in Paris. Paris, the city of love. Callie and I had been dating for 3 years, and I finally mustered up the courage to propose to her. We were on a magical trip. I'd saved up for months to make this the most romantic getaway ever. The city was just as enchanting as the movies make it out to be, with its golden streets, lovely cafes, and the ever-present towering Eiffel Tower. The day I decided to propose was surreal. The morning was slightly chilly, but the sky was painted with hues of pink and gold. We decided to have a picnic near the Eiffel Tower. I had it all planned out. A basket full of her favorite pastries, cheeses, and of course, a bottle of the finest French champagne. As we sat there, eating and laughing, I felt this overwhelming surge of happiness. I remember thinking, this is the moment. Taking a deep breath, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small velvet box. I looked into Callie's sparkling eyes and asked her to marry me. Her reaction was priceless, a mix of shock, joy, and tears. She said, yes. We both were on cloud 9. As we stood up, the world seemed to blur around us, with only the two of us in focus. I slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it was made just for her. We took photos with the Eiffel Tower as our backdrop, our hands intertwined, showing off the shiny new ring. Afterwards, we walked along the Seine, the city lights reflecting off the water, talking about our dreams, our future together. I thought this was the start of our happily ever after. How naive I was. So after the dreamy Paris trip, we came back to our life in New York. Everything should have been perfect, right? With the memories of Paris still fresh in our minds, I was looking forward to planning our wedding and starting our life together. But things started to change almost immediately. Callie began getting texts at odd hours. At first, I didn't think much of it. I mean, everyone gets texts, right? But then it became more frequent. Late at night, early in the morning, and even during our dates, it was like she was glued to her phone. One evening, as we were cuddling on the couch watching a movie, her phone buzzed again. She quickly grabbed it, her eyes widening slightly as she read the message. Trying to act casual, I asked, "Who's texting you so late?" She hesitated for a moment, then replied with a forced smile, "Oh, it's just a friend from work." But the way she said it, it sounded off, like she was hiding something. I tried to push away my doubts, telling myself I was being paranoid. But the more I observed, the more suspicious I became. She started taking calls in the other room, whispering so I couldn't hear. She'd tilt her phone away whenever I was close. The woman who once shared every detail of her life with me now had a secret life of her own. One night, I couldn't help myself. As she was in the shower, her phone buzzed again on the nightstand. I glanced at it and saw a name I didn't recognize. The message preview said, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." My heart sank. I felt sick to my stomach. When Callie came out of the shower, I decided to confront her. "Who's texting you with kissy emojis?" I tried to sound calm, but my voice betrayed my anxiety. She looked taken aback. "Oh, that? It's just, a joke. My coworkers and I, we have this weird sense of humor." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something in her eyes told me there was more to the story. I let it go that night, but I knew I needed to find out the truth. What was Callie hiding? Okay, Reddit, this is where things started to get really twisted. Remember how I said everything was changing with Callie? Well, it took another turn when out of the blue, my stepbrother Joran decided to pay a visit. Let me give you some background. Joran and I haven't spoken in years. There was a huge family fight when we were teenagers, and we went our separate ways. Our parents separated, and I hadn't seen or heard from him since. So you can imagine my surprise when he suddenly showed up at our doorstep in New York. I was shocked, to say the least. "Joran, what? How? Why are you here?" I stammered, struggling to find the right words. He flashed a sly smile. "Thought it was time to bury the hatchet, big bro. Can I come in?" I hesitated for a moment, but then stepped aside, letting him in. I mean, family is family, right? As he walked in, Callie came out of the kitchen. The moment their eyes met, there was this tension. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Kalia seemed nervous, her eyes darting between me and Joran. Kalia, this is Joran, my stepbrother, I introduced, trying to ease the atmosphere. Joran, this is Kalia, my fiancé. Joran stepped closer, taking Kalia's hand. Nice to meet you, Kalia. He held onto her hand a second too long, making the situation even more awkward. The evening was filled with forced conversations, weird glances, and awkward silences. Every time I left the room, I could hear them whispering, but couldn't quite make out the words. It felt like they had a secret, something they didn't want me to know. The more I observed, the more my gut feeling grew. The way Joran looked at Kalia, the way she blushed and avoid eye contact. Something was definitely off. But what could they possibly have in common considering they'd just met? After Joran left, I confronted Kalia. Did you know Joran before today? I asked point blank. She looked taken aback. What? No, of course not. Why would you even ask that? But her reaction seemed rehearsed, like she was ready for that question. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind raced with a million thoughts. The pieces of the puzzle started coming together, but I didn't want to believe it. Could it be? Was Joran the mysterious work friend Kalia was texting? All right, Reddit. This part still hurts to think about, but I guess I need to let it out. After Joran's weird visit, I was more alert than ever. Kalia's secretive behavior, Joran's surprise appearance, it all seemed connected, but I had no solid proof. One evening, as we were preparing for a night out, I realized I'd left my phone in the bedroom. I needed to make a quick reservation at our favorite Italian place downtown. Without thinking much, I grabbed Kalia's phone from the kitchen counter to make the call. As I was about to dial, I saw a notification pop up. It was from Joran. Miss you. Last night was amazing. My heart sank to my stomach. The room started spinning, and I could feel my palms getting sweaty. This couldn't be happening. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened their chat. Message after message confirmed my worst fears. They had been meeting secretly for months, even before our trip to Paris. There were intimate photos, secret rendezvous plans, and declarations of feelings. The woman I loved, my fiancé, was having an affair with my estranged stepbrother. As I scrolled further, I found out that they met at a work conference in Boston a year ago. Their relationship started as a friendship but quickly turned romantic. They laughed about how clueless I was, how easy it was to lie to me. It felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Suddenly, I heard footsteps. Kalia walked into the kitchen and saw me holding her phone, her messages wide open. The color drained from her face. Kale, I can explain, she stammered. But I was beyond words. I felt numb, betrayed, and devastated. I threw the phone on the table and walked out. I needed to clear my head, to process what I had just discovered. The two people I trusted the most had stabbed me in the back. Redit, I never imagined I'd be in a situation like this. But life is unpredictable, isn't it? After walking around for hours trying to process everything, I returned home. Kalia was sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. The silence between us was deafening. Finally, I broke the silence. How could you, Kalia? With Joran of all people. How long were you planning on keeping this from me? She hesitated for a moment, then whispered, I'm so sorry, Kale. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I scoffed. Wasn't supposed to happen like this? Or wasn't supposed to happen at all? She took a deep breath. It started innocently. We met at the conference and we just clicked. You were always so busy with work, with your friends. I felt neglected, lonely. Joran was there and he listened. My mind raced. I'd been working extra hours to save up for our wedding, our future. So it's my fault? You're blaming me for your betrayal? She looked down, tears streaming down her face. No, it's not like that. I needed someone, and Joran was there. I never meant to hurt you. I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. So you're saying that if I paid more attention to you, this wouldn't have happened? Kalia nodded slowly. Maybe, I don't know. Everything's so complicated. I felt like I was in a nightmare. Here was the love of my life, gaslighting me, making me feel guilty for her affair with my stepbrother. It was too much to bear. Kalia, We were about to get married. We had plans, dreams. How could you throw it all away for a fling? I asked, voice trembling. She sobbed. I don't know, Kale. I'm so confused. I messed up. If I thought confronting Kalia was hard, facing Joran was a whole different level. I knew where he was staying, so I made my way there the next morning, my heart heavy but determined. He needed to know that I was aware of their deceit, and I wanted answers. I knocked on his door, trying to steady my shaking hands. Joran opened it with that same sly grin, his eyes scanning me up and down as if evaluating the damage he'd caused. Well, if it isn't the heartbroken fiancé, he sneered. Fighting back my anger, I shot back. Cut the act, Joran. What the hell were you thinking? She's my fiancé. He leaned against the doorway, crossing his arms. Was, Kale. Was your fiancé. And honestly, I did you a favor. If it wasn't me, it would have been someone else. I clenched my fists. What's that supposed to mean? Joran smirked. Kalia never really loved you. If she did, she wouldn't have fallen for me so easily. I could feel the heat rising in my face. This isn't just about Kalia, Joran. This is about you and me, our family, our past. Why? Why do this to me? He shrugged, feigning innocence. Life's funny, isn't it? Sometimes the universe throws people together, like Kalia and me. And sometimes it pulls them apart, like you two. My vision blurred with tears of rage. You're delusional if you think this is fate or destiny. This is betrayal, Joran. Betrayal by both of you. Joran took a step closer, his voice low and menacing. I showed you her true colors, Kale. You should be thanking me. I stared at him, unable to fathom his audacity. You may have won this round, Joran, but remember, karma has a way of catching up. Okay, Reddit, I know what you're probably thinking. Revenge isn't the answer, and two wrongs don't make a right. But at that point, the pain and betrayal had consumed me. I couldn't think straight. All I wanted was for Joran to feel a fraction of the pain he'd inflicted on me. One evening, while drowning my sorrows in a local bar, I ran into an old friend, Marcus. As we reminisced about old times, I steered the conversation towards Joran. Marcus's face darkened, and he mentioned something interesting. Joran was deep in debt. Apparently, he owed a significant amount of money to some not-so-friendly people in the city. This was my chance. Over the next few days, I discreetly gathered information on these dangerous individuals and their operations. If Joran owed them money, maybe I could use that to my advantage. One night, after ensuring I wasn't being followed or watched, I made an anonymous call from a payphone. I tipped them off about Joran's whereabouts, mentioning that he was trying to skip town without paying his debts. I hung up before they could ask any questions. Back home, I felt a mix of satisfaction and guilt. On one hand, Joran would finally get what was coming to him. But on the other, was I becoming just as bad as him? It was a whirlwind of emotions. The next morning, news broke out about a major scuffle at the hotel where Joran was staying. While the details were scarce, rumors suggested that it was related to unsettled debts. I couldn't help but feel responsible. What had I done? The days that followed were intense. Word on the street was that Joran had a nasty run-in with the people he owed money to. Rumor had it they gave him an ultimatum: pay up or face severe consequences. With no way to cough up the cash in such short notice, Joran fled New York, becoming a fugitive. In the midst of all this chaos, Kalia's life began spiraling too. Turned out her job had some connections to Joran. With him on the run, the company faced backlash, and she was made a scapegoat. Within a week, Kalia was out of a job. I'd see her sometimes, looking a shadow of her former self, pale, stressed, and worn out. Our paths crossed at a coffee shop one day. There was no anger, no heated words, just silence and the weight of our broken relationship between us. She looked up, her eyes filled with tears. I've lost everything, Kyle, she whispered. Joran's gone. I've lost my job and I've lost you. Though I was still hurt, seeing her in such a state evoked a strange mix of pity and satisfaction. The tables had turned. The woman who once had everything, love, a promising career, and a secret affair, was now left with nothing. It wasn't joy that I felt, not exactly. It was more a realization of how life can change in the blink of an eye. One wrong move, one betrayal, and everything can come crashing down. I thought I had seen it all. But that rainy night, fate had another surprise for me. It was late, and the sound of heavy rain against my window was the only noise in my apartment. Lost in thought, I was startled by a desperate knock on my door. When I opened it, there stood Kalia, drenched from head to toe, mascara running down her cheeks, making her look like a tragic figure straight out of a noir film. She looked up, her blue eyes wide and filled with remorse. "KL," she whispered, her voice trembling. I stepped back, letting her in. She was shivering, both from the cold and the weight of the moment. "What are you doing here, Kalia?" She took a deep breath. I needed to see you, to apologize. I've made a terrible mistake, Kyle. I never should have let Joran come between us." I felt a rush of emotions. Anger, pity, sadness, all rolled into one. "Kalia, it's not that simple. You betrayed our trust, our love." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know, and I regret it every single day. I thought Joran was the answer to the loneliness I felt, but he wasn't. It was always you, Kale. Only you." She stepped closer, her wet hair sticking to her face. "I'm so sorry. Please, Kale, can you ever forgive me? Can we start over?" The room felt heavy with tension and unsaid words. I remembered our days in Paris, the love and the promises, but I also remembered the pain, the betrayal. Was it possible to ever trust her again? To ever love her the same way? Read it that night, standing at the threshold of my apartment with Kalia's pleading eyes searching mine, was the hardest moment of my life. My heart ached, wanting to comfort her, to erase the pain of the past months. But another part of me held back, reminding me of the sleepless nights and the sting of betrayal. I wish it were that easy, Kalia," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I wish I could forget everything and go back to how things were. But every time I'd look at you, I'd be reminded of what happened. The trust we had, it's shattered." Kalia's face crumpled and she clutched the sides of my shirt. "I'll do anything, Kyle. Anything to make it right. Please." I gently took her hands off me, holding them for a moment. Sometimes wanting to make things right isn't enough. We need to accept the consequences of our actions and move on. Her tears mingled with the raindrops as she looked at me, desperation evident in her gaze. "So, this is it? We're done?" I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'll always have a place for you in my heart, Kalia. But I can't be with someone I can't trust. I hope one day you find the happiness and peace you're searching for." With that, I slowly closed the door, leaving her standing in the rain. I slid to the floor, the weight of the finality of the situation crashing down on me.